Think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4. Everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.
Welcome to Tales from the Field. My name is Bradley Ball, and we are back and better than ever. Today is a very special day. We have members of the Postgres product group joining us, so we are very, very excited to get to that very, very quickly. We just want to acknowledge some of the things going on in the world. I'm from Western North Carolina. I went to high school there. I went to college there at Western Carolina University, and right now there's massive cleanup efforts going on. Down in the description of the video, you're going to find some links for resources if you're interested in how you can help with the hurricane relief efforts of Western North Carolina. Just know there are a ton of volunteer organizations on the ground doing good work, helping people there. There are multiple different pilot programs as well you can donate to, and they are right now doing airlifts into the area to be able to get goods to those where there have been bridges or roads washed away and transportation may not be great. To my friends and to my family and all those that I love over in that region, we love you, we see you, and please do take care and stay safe. Meanwhile, we're here in Florida preparing for once in a lifetime hurricane. So if you're in the area where there's an evacuation order, please make sure and heed that. Make sure and get out. There are going to be plenty of shelter locations. We will also add a link to the description of the video just in case you need it, of where you can find those. But if you Google or Bing is just fine, right? Bing's okay. If you Google or Bing evacuation or shelter locations, know that they are being set up, that their Augusta state and local government is working very hard on that. So as we begin to talk about technology, we just want to make sure and acknowledge everyone out there, especially those people still reeling from hail in Florida as well, in South Carolina, in Tennessee, and also in Georgia. Our thoughts are with all of you. Please stay safe out there as these next storms come along. Okay, now let's get to the technology and the fun stuff, right? Because that's why we're here. We're here to have a little bit of fun, and we're here to talk technology. And I am so excited that today we have Varun Dhawan, we have Jared Mead, and they are joining us from the Postgres team. Of course, you know me, I'm Bradley Ball, and I've got my colleague, the one and only Neeraj Jhaveri, joining us down in the bottom right-hand corner. Neeraj, any thoughts that you've got? I was going to say eloquent as always.
Sorry, writing out of mute. No, great to see Varun and Jared in this meeting, and be looking forward to hear from you guys.
Absolutely. And please keep in mind, if you have any questions, all you have to do is make a comment on the stream. And one of my amazing co-hosts, myself or Neeraj, we will see that and we will add it to the stream. You will be a part of the show. If you have a question for the Postgres team, it's a wonderful way to be able to get it. But if you're watching this video after the fact, after it has gone live, if you put a question at the bottom of the page, we are going to get it to our friends right here. We will get you an answer. We will post it online as well. We've had the team here before. We absolutely love the team. This is not going to be the last time you've heard them talking about great and amazing, wonderful things having to do with PostgreSQL. But as we're going, Varun and Jared, Varun, I'm going to start off with you. Would you mind introducing yourself and talk a little bit about what it is you do for Microsoft?
Yeah, for sure. Hey, first of all, thanks for having us again. Brad, Neeraj, you guys do run this an awesome show over here. We absolutely love the format. We were just talking backstage, especially that opening music. The consistency and the quality of the whole show, we love that. So, really happy to be here. Well, I'm Varun. This is the second time I'm being over here. I'm a principal product manager with Azure open source database team. And then I've been working on databases for very long, like for over 20 years. Accidentally, I'm not an accidental DBA, and it was a deliberate attempt to be a DBA.
Accidentally on purpose.
And then prior to Microsoft, I had a very long career also at Target. If you happen to ever be in North America, you probably would have shopped at Bullseye store. I used to work in their database DevOps team, and then I have worked with and then I've worked at McKinsey, a consulting company, very early stages of my career as the database SRE. I live in Minnesota, which is this land of 10,000 lakes. So besides the snow, I think everything else, is very beautiful in Minnesota. I love to bike. We have a lot of shoreline over here. And then besides the biking, I love to blog, so I extensively blog a lot, which we'll talk about some part, in my presentation. But then I do have my personal blog, datanerd.blog. So do check it out.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love that.
that's about me.
No, and I will make sure, and I'm going to pull that up right now. But we'll get a link, a banner, and we'll also throw that in the description of the video. Datanerd.com. Wait, that's a good get. I imagine a lot of people would like to get that URL. Uh, great stuff, Jared. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks for having me as well. I am very excited to be here. I don't have a blog just yet, but I'm thinking that that might be something that I have to add to the list of things on my to-do list. I am really excited to be here as one of the newer members of the Azure Postgres team, and I think that speaks volumes to the amount of growth that we're seeing across the platform. And again, I want to echo Varun's comments. The ability to connect with the community is so exciting for us. That is what makes Postgres as a platform so powerful, that it is something that's created by the community and it is being used in all aspects of industry. So we're excited to talk to the community here today as well.
Excellent, excellent. I'm so excited to have you. One of the things we talked about the last time, Varun, that you were on and had joined us, specifically was the commitment that Microsoft and the Postgres team has to the community. And we talked about how we are the largest contributor to open source, and to the open source Postgres project in the world. There's a lot of big companies out there. There's a lot of people who contribute to that. But I think we were talking about how y'all were at a conference recently, and there was a very big company that we will not name, but we probably all shop at, that was up on stage talking about how they were number two. And we had Joshua Johnson on last time, and we joked in the pre-show. I said, Josh, you had to be really tempted to pull out a 20 and go up to somebody and go up to the mic and ask them who number one is.
We do a
Yeah,
lot, yeah. And
yeah.
thanks for bringing it up, Brad. Because one of my slides, I remember how excited you were even before that presentation, when the first time we were backstage talking about what Azure Postgres team does, and we talk about how much we contribute back to the core engine, to the core community version. So I got some slides, to talk about this time. So it will be pretty exciting, yeah. But yeah, no, we contribute a lot, yeah.
Excellent, excellent stuff. So if you don't mind, do you want me to go ahead and kick it off with some of what you've got?
For sure, yeah. You can pull me up, my screen. Let me know once you're able to see it.
We should be good on your screen. I may play around with where we are right now. I've got us along the bottom. If anything graphic wise comes up that is important information on the bottom, I will switch us to a different view so we're not in the way of the slide.
Cool. So I'm going to start off us, and then probably have Jared, will segue into the Jared section. So Postgres on Azure. I think the last time we talked about, our flagship service, and we also actually first deep dive into what is Postgres. If in just in case if you haven't heard about it, so Postgres is a relational database, and it's an open source. It's an open source database. It's contributed by community members, and then some of the larger corporations like us and some of our competitors, we build managed service around it, so that you don't have to do the mundane work of building the high availability or building the backups or scaling to 1000 servers. You just get that all baked in, and then all you do is using a portal or using some DevOps tool, you can just get started and get using Postgres. And yeah, and then Postgres solves a lot of use cases. Everything that you can think about is available, in Postgres, which you can think about in any commercial database. Now, our flagship service in Azure is Azure Database for Postgres Flexible Server. It's We design the whole service keeping in mind the requirements for enterprise and developers. Now, each persona, if we were to say, enterprise and developers being two different persona, have different requirements. So let's start with developers, which is on the right hand side. So developer needs ecosystem integration, like I love to code on Python, or I like to code on Java, or Ruby is my thing. And how natively, intuitively, those things integrate is very important. And Postgres, not only sets the benchmark, it basically exceeds the benchmark just because it's being an open source. Whenever there is a new language, say Rust, uh, and you will always find some open source team or set of developers who will make sure that it becomes their thing, that they build the native SDKs or integrations for that new language. So we are always at the forefront of it. So I've covered, the integration and the SDKs part. Now, Postgres is 100% community led. That's another thing which really sets us apart. It's not owned by any corporation. It can never be owned by any corporation. This group of developers come together. They maintain, an amazing backlog of things, that what we want to achieve in the next release. And then this is one full year of development. So we drop one major release every year. So very recently, which we Postgres release PG17. So we are going to talk a little bit about that. And then the AI integration. How can we miss the AI hype which is happening in the industry? And rightfully experts outside, it's the next big thing after industrial revolution. And Postgres is because of the data types, the vector integration has been at the forefront. Like Postgres was the first database where you can have your data and you can vectorize your data and just run all the AI things. You don't need to think about any other database. And Microsoft, realized this. Our team did a lot, not only contributing back, to the open source stuff, but some of the things which we talked about in our, with Josh talked about in the last, last session, that how we have some extensions, to talk about AI. And then,
Absolutely. And I was going to say last time we did a lot of talking about the enterprise features. And those are key features that if any enterprise organization is going to evaluate a relational database management system, that we need to make sure is there. But once we get the, checkboxes done for enterprise and we get that infrastructure going, developers are really the key. Making sure that we've got a developer friendly database model is very, very key. And I remember some of the stuff that we talked about with Josh, and I know we're going to touch a little bit on AI. I know we're not going to go super deep, but we're going to touch a little bit on it. And you're absolutely right. Vectorization, there's a massive, massive trend for every database to be able to adopt vectorization. It's been in Postgres for a while. Postgres has two different types of indexes that you can use on vectorized types. And for those out there that are going, what's a vector? Well, a vector is a set of coordinates. And typically, what you would do is if you've got a large language model like a chat GPT system, and maybe you want to do some type of vectorization of like a PDF document, right? You've got a lot of different documents. You want to scan them. You've got a knowledge base. You may have invoices. You may have different customer items that you're taking care of, email correspondence, could even be transcripts for meetings or things of that nature. You can pass that information, that document information, a PDF typically, to be able to take word chunks together in vectorization, store those vectorized formats. And that way, instead of passing the document through to a large language model, you can take a much smaller subset of data, which would be these vectorizations. And if you're looking for, here's a concept and give me this concept and what documents correlate to this concept, you're passing that vectorized information. There's
right.
also fascinating things. And again, I don't want to steal too much, but based off where predicate values, which we've had in databases forever, when you look at how do I filter information by role to be able to have that vectorized in an agent without having to have specific subsets of agents that can only be trained on certain sets of documents, which could get expensive. This is part of that key functionality as well. So you guys are so primed to be able to do that. And that's one of those big things where developers are looking for guidance because we're really, flying the plane and building it at the exact same time. There's a lot of times people will ask, how do you do this? And I just sit there and go, that's a great question. We're going to figure that out. But yeah,
And
this
then,
is the first time for me too.
and talking about the indexes, you mentioned two, HNSW and IVF flat. Well, right now we are in October 2024, and I think this is no longer, a private announcement because Charles, announced this in the recent conference. We have a third type of index, which is proprietary to Microsoft. That shows our commitment to keep working on this and improving the ecosystem. We now have a new disk ANN index type, which is not only faster, like normally we relate indexes to being, performance oriented, but when you work with vector data and you talk about indexes over there, the indexes also serve a different value prop, which is how accurate is the results, like. So this canon is the new index, and then probably one of the next talks, Brad, if you will allow us, then we'll love to come back and talk about this canon. But then let's
I
come back,
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And DiskAN is a technology that we developed back in the late 2018, 2019, and we're really starting to see wide implementation of this in the Azure ecosystem. It's a great technology. So many things we build at Microsoft, and it may take a little while once we build it to be able to find that practical application. But this is a massively efficient type of index to be able to use over vectorized types. Really amazing stuff. Yeah,
right,
please. Sorry,
correct.
Varun, go ahead.
No, yeah, no. And then enterprise fundamentals, we touched a little bit. So these are very important, like if you just want to use a managed service, you just want all these goodness to be baked in. So starting with the performance, cost is an important thing in the economy we are. Uh, we built a lot of tooling around IOPS and CPU that you can dynamically control these things, based upon your workload. There's autonomous tuning, which automatically understand your workload type and then tunes the database and server parameters accordingly. There is resiliency, which is very important. Backups, geo redundancy, automatic failovers. This is all goodness baked in. Security, thanks to the era that we are living in, cybersecurity is top priority for every large enterprise and CIOs. So we have stuff like identity control, encryption, private endpoints. What I don't see over here is also the authentication that you can have. The Azure AAD authentications for your Postgres, and then finally for monitoring, you can audit your data. You can visualize. There's a lot of rich telemetry, logs, and metrics, so you can visualize all those things in your favorite tool, like whether you use Grafana or Datadog or Splunk. And then there is alerting, like obviously visuals don't wake you up, alerts do. So there is built-in alerting. And then moving on, like building on to some of the enterprise fundamentals, well, there it is. I was talking about the intro ID. That's all built in. We have private endpoints and virtual networks. So depending upon how secure you want your ecosystem to be in, you can choose either. There is data encryption using the key, and then this is yeah, and you can manage the keys. And we are doing some more automation around the key management. We have the Azure Defender integration, which is our default or flagship service for all the threat deductions. There is availability zone, so high availability built in right over there. You have same zone and cross zone availability. Then you have GeoDR, so for making sure that you don't run into any of the regional failures. You have a GeoDR capability. Uh, Performance, I just talked about. Azure policy, which is again Azure policies is where you can define some policies for your service, and then we have just integrated the Azure policy with our service. Azure Advisor recommendations, have been around for some time. What's latest over here is that thanks to all the ML capabilities that we do, understand a lot of telemetry, and then based upon the telemetry, we give you a lot of recommendations. Now, these are some of the larger customers we have, and then we have tons of many other customers, which are using Azure Postgres. Well, here's the big reveal, that Postgres 17 is now available in preview. This is
Yeah,
just coming hot, fresh, baked in. Postgres 17 was actually released, if I'm not wrong, on 26th of September. And I think we just went ahead and announced Postgres 17 availability in preview on 30th. So technically like three days later. So that's
excellent.
the, yeah, so that's
That's an incredible turnaround time too. When you think about the time to market it's taken us in the past to be able to take a service, bring that service online. The first question you always get, right, whenever we talk about an open source is people go, "What version are you on? What version are you on? What version? When am I going to get this version?" And so within 3 days for us to have that turnaround and have this version available in preview, That's stunning. That's wonderful.
We are really proud of the work the team did over here, both engineering and product. So yeah, it's this is a good news. We are really excited about Postgres 17. It's a new release. Here's a blog. Here's an aka ms link. If anybody is like, you can just screenshot it, and it's a short link, and then you can read about the whole thing. There's a little blog. Now, coming, to the part, Brad, you were talking. Well, I'm so excited that how much Microsoft contributes back. Well, this is the slide, we put for you. In Postgres 17, we had almost 412 commits, which were made by, the engineers who work in our team, and these commits were in almost every part of the database. But then over here we've just highlighted some of the big ones, like IO combining, query planner, reduce memory usage for sort. Actually, let's go to the next slide. I think some of these are explained. So there's IO combining performance, which is how you define the IO combine, and there's also a reference to the vector read, and then this is the union planner improvements. So so this is just an example of how much Microsoft contributes back. Now, these contributions, just to be very, very clear, they go back to the community Postgres. So if you happen to go download Postgres, which is available, and then put it on your laptop and start using it, you will still get all this goodness. There's nothing proprietary, about Microsoft. However, we also, have now PG17 available on Azure Postgres Flexible Server, so you can still take advantage of all these, the latest goodness. Moving on,
That
I know I have to hand it over to Jared, but yeah, and I think, Brad, you just mentioned, the release velocity, how much time, we took to release. So that shows our release velocity. So major version, available within days of community. Postgres also have something called dot releases, the minor versions, which drops typically 4 times a year. So we also try to maintain a very solid cadence. But more importantly, for major versions, there's an on-demand upgrade where you allow, whenever you want, you upgrade to the newer version. For minor versions, because they contain very important security patches and fixes, that we auto upgrade, these minor versions, and typically they never have breaking changes. Uh, and that's a release velocity. We started with PG12 in 2009, and here we are with PG17 in 2024. Uh, Last thing is that we run. I was talking about blog, that how I love blogging. Well, I do blog on my personal blog Data Nerd, but then this is the place where I spend a lot of time, which is Azure Postgres blog. I do a lot of these feature recaps, which technically, uh, is the contribution from everything the team does, and we send these recaps out. But then, other than that, so there's an awesome stuff, which is posted by some of my colleagues and other team members. There's mirroring over there, Brad. So this is something that we can also talk about, knowing how much we love talking about mirroring on this show. So we have the mirroring integration now with Azure Postgres. But yeah, do check out our blog. Um, and then
well,
finally,
and,
this
and sorry, was that fabric mirroring? What
that's
Postgres?
that's the fabric mirroring. Yeah, that's the fabric
Wow.
mirroring. Yeah.
Okay,
Now,
so for anybody who's looking to consume this data in an analytical format in Microsoft Fabric, I know customers that I've worked with, one of the big things is always, how do we get those ingestion pipelines? And for those who are familiar with Postgres, who might not be familiar with mirroring, this really shortcuts that. As a consultant, I used to make really good money walking into a place and forklifting their data in, working on what the data integration strategy would be, building pipelines, packages to be able to say, here's how we're going to incrementally load your data. Here's how we're going to reprocess your database layer. And the thing is, with mirroring, you turn that on and it just begins copying that data over for the tables that you select. And then it begins to do the incremental changes. And so there may be some latency, but we're talking minimal latency to be able to get that real-time data refreshed. And once it's in there as a mirror, you could shortcut it to a KQL database, to a lakehouse. You could shortcut it using a 3-point naming convention query as a view to a data warehouse. Wherever you want to access that in Postgres for your final destination to be able to build a semantic model, consume it in Power BI, you've got it there. It takes care of that. That's a massive, massive uh, set of functionality to be able to just really get quick insights and analytics with that data. And then you've got the whole host of everything in Fabric, right? AI skills, being able to put those together to be able to have questions and answers using a chat GPT model that you can just, and a RAG pattern you could use in seconds. Wow. I don't want to sleep on that for a second, Varun, because that's a big deal. That's great stuff.
Yeah, no, like the team has been working very hard at work and bringing these features. Yeah, and that's another blog. Feel free to read it. Yeah, which talks about everything that Microsoft does for Postgres. This slides, talks about all the region coverage which we have. We are always adding region. So I'll have one of the PMs, who takes care of these region deployments, also join us, in one of the future sessions. And that, this is where I hand it over to Jared, who works for the migration teams. And he can build about, why is migrations important to us? And then why is migrations important right now, as we transition between on older service, to our flagship flexible server. So Jared, over to you.
Yeah, what a wonderful summary. And there are so many other features just around Postgres 17 alone that are worth looking into, that are going to provide a number of improvements to any workloads that you're running on Postgres without any code changes. The work that our team and other contributors to the Postgres platform have committed are really incredible work. So big kudos to the team. That's an important milestone. The reason
Absolutely.
the
Oh,
reason that
sorry.
we are
If
able,
I could,
oh yeah,
because I
go ahead.
love what you were just talking about, and I love what Varun is talking about. That's the thing is Microsoft is involved. Anybody who runs Postgres benefits from our involvement. Benefits from us being able to commit something, because those commits go into that open source project wherever you're using Postgres. At this point in time, you have felt the impact of the Microsoft product group committing to this open source repo. And I'm super excited for this, Jared. I'm gonna transition it right back to you, because the number one thing is, if you're outside of Azure, how do I get my data into Azure? And we're talking migrations at that point in time.
Great question, right? And so the pumps have been primed, engines are started, everyone's excited. How do we take advantage of all of these capabilities? And the point I just wanted to add around why Microsoft Azure is so compelling and why you want to consider migrating to Microsoft Azure, Postgres on Azure, is that we are running the same binaries and builds as the community. We don't have a proprietary fork. We are using the community platform. And then all of the, let's say, additional capabilities, some may be proprietary, like our Azure integration, but we're building on top of that strong foundation of that community platform that creates the best of both worlds. So let's get into what the migrations are about, why migrations are so important, and I'll just take a step back to really reframe this conversation for organizations who may be running on premise. You know that all of those capabilities that Varun highlighted are essentially table stakes. You cannot run a platform without disaster recovery, without high availability, without backups, with all of those requirements. And that takes effort, that takes time, that takes resources, and that takes away from what you might be doing as far as new feature implementation or applying resources to more of the new capabilities that are being introduced to the community. And that's what is an important driver for migration. This shared responsibility model that we provide allow organizations to continue to use Postgres. If they're already using it on premise, we can help you migrate with our services that I'll go into in a moment. But even if you're using other non-Postgres platforms, we've got a number of avenues that we can use to help you migrate to Azure Postgres and take advantage of all those Postgres features and those new capabilities, like vectorized databases, like the in-database large language model features that are now recently available, a number of new capabilities. I'll just highlight one of the aspects that makes Postgres so exciting is that it is so much more than just a relational database. The extensiveness and the extensions community allows you to create a number of different new capabilities that Postgres can do outside of just relational feature sets. So I don't want to go
Jared,
through. Yeah, please.
I was going to say, if I could, for those people who may not be familiar with a Postgres extension, what does it mean to have extensions in Postgres?
Right, great question, and I'll let Varun jump in at any point in this question as well. But an extension is a customized, let's say, packaged set of features that you're able to deploy to your Postgres database that unlock those new capabilities or those features that are available inside that extension. I'll give you a fantastic example, one that's very popular. Timescale is a popular extension that you can deploy to a Postgres database that creates a new set of functional capabilities around time series related data sets. It allows you to really unlock performance, add those capabilities for time series specific data that is using the Postgres engine under the covers, and then we're building on, or the extension creators are building on features that allow you to add even more capabilities to the database.
I love it that you brought up time series, because it's so great when it comes to IoT to be able to turn that on, consume that data, especially if you've got all those different IoT devices, organize things by dates, and by that time series data. And not only that, there was recently big news about that in migrations with time series. I don't want to go ahead of your slides too much. Maybe we get to that a little bit later, but that news was very exciting.
I just want to add the extensions part because it's so important and so native to Postgres. Is that we keep talking about, well, Postgres is open source, it's community. If you break it down and try and understand how extensions contribute to that piece, that when we say that it's community, anybody can go and develop. Well, you don't, when you say you develop something in Postgres, you don't really always have to go back and contribute something as a code, to the main engine. You can also develop something like an extension, like Microsoft is developing its own extension. Tomorrow we can decide to have that extension open source, and it's available, in Postgres generally for everybody to use. So yeah, extension and extensibility is the key part of what helps to grow the Postgres ecosystem.
Absolutely. When we were talking about AI, part of the AI capabilities are offered through extension. If someone is more of a SQL Server person, the way that they would think about it is when you set up SQL Server, when you install SQL Server, you have those different feature flags that you check, the little check boxes. I want this feature. I want in-memory OLTP. I want file shares. Whatever feature it is you want, database replication, something of that nature. Same thing for Postgres, only it's not a checkbox. You've got access to these extensions, and you've got access to these extensions at any point in time. You could deploy a
Sure.
Postgres instance and say, I'd really like to have this functionality in place, deploy an extension, and now you've got time series capabilities for IoT. You've got OpenAI capabilities through the OpenAI extension that we have. So there's a whole host of them. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there
3,000,
are
yeah,
yeah,
approximately, yeah.
There are a number
3,000.
of extensions for
Yeah.
migrations as well, so we'll get into
Ooh,
that.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah.
so let's yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's get let's get that data in here, because what is a database without data? It's sad and lonely. So we have to migrate that data in.
So what I would like to talk about today are the migration tools that we provide that allow you to adopt and incorporate Azure Postgres into your workloads. And today we support a number of different data sources. That set of data sources is also continuously growing. And so we'll talk about some of the new sources that we have in the pipeline that we are planning to incorporate into our migrations platform. I should add that you don't have to wait for our migration service to support any of those source databases. There are a number of independent software vendors and system integrators that can help you with any of your source systems that you do want to target for Azure Postgres, but we also realize the importance of providing that natively from the Azure platform. So today, I'm going to get a little bit closer to the screen so I make sure I can see everything. But we help with migrating. If you're already on Azure, perhaps you've been using Postgres single server, We provide the migration service that allows you to seamlessly move that workload from single server to Flex. Single server has been deprecated, and so everyone should be focusing on the capabilities of Flex server today. But the migration service is a seamless, really reliable way to help you get there. If you're not already using a managed service like single server, perhaps you're running Postgres on VMs, data migration service can work with you to help you take advantage of those platform capabilities. Any on-premise databases, the beauty again of our approach is that we're running the community open source bits. You have that assurance that you're going to have the ability to run your workloads in the same capacity on premise as you do, and our data migration service can help you get there. If you're running a Postgres-like service in a number of the other cloud hosts or hyperscalers, we provide data migration services that allow you to target those services like ECS, RDS. We've recently announced support for Aurora and GCP, and I'm very excited to say that we're going to be incorporating features into our data migration service that will allow end-to-end migration for Heroku, Oracle, and EDB if those are sources that you use today and you want to consider using Azure Postgres. The approach that we take to our migration is one where we're going to migrate all of those schema objects. We're going to look at all of the logic inside the procedures and functions. We're going to give you that parity of capability, and we're offering this as a free service. And we'll go into what that service entails and what you are going to encounter when you go through the migration service, but we really want to highlight that this is a free service. This is one that targets a number of sources today and even more in the future. And when it comes to migrating your data, we're also going to give you choices in how you would like to implement that. We refer to those as offline or online today, but essentially the way you could think about that is a snapshot and then a snapshot plus an incremental sync of using something along the lines of change data capture.
I love it. What and one thing real quick for those who may not be again familiar with the system, part of the reason that you might do an Oracle to Postgres migration is data type support. The data type support that we have from an Oracle migration, anybody who's ever done an Oracle to SQL migration knows there's a lot of data type conversion. There's a lot of changes in language from PLSQL and whatnot. So it's really, really important to be able to have that data type support for an ease of migration experience, and you get that with Postgres. So that's absolutely massive, and the level of support you're putting in place for the additional clouds, huge win.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that point about Oracle Postgres migrations, and we have some slides that we'll get into for a moment in a little bit. But I just wanted to highlight the workflow or the pipeline or the stages that you need to consider, and the stages that the migration service provides when you are migrating your data, because it is not impossible, but it is complex and it does require some consideration and planning. So we do plan, we start a migration initially with an assessment and migration validation, and that is going to include a number of different aspects. Are we appropriately sizing the Postgres cluster to manage the workload appropriately when you're migrating your functionality according to the amount of usage and the demands that you're currently requiring? Are we ensuring that you have the capability of functionality? Can we meet those capabilities, and do we have to make any changes to make sure that you're able to run your systems appropriately? When we're migrating your definitions, we refer to those as schema definitions or schema objects. We're going to make sure that those are migrated appropriately, and that includes both the data structures, like your tables and views, as well as the logic, like stored procedures, functions, and so forth. And then we talked about the type of migrations of data that we can do both offline and online. We do provide some capabilities that help you with application migration, but in many cases, if you are migrating from a Postgres database or a Postgres-like platform to Azure Postgres, your application migration could be as simple as just changing a connection string. And then finally, there are built-in capabilities into the Azure platform that provide in-depth monitoring and observability to ensure that your system is as performant or even more performant than you may have been experiencing previously. Speaking about heterogeneous, oh, and you can jump in.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, great question in the comments. So we have many customers still using Postgres single server due to the retirement next year. What would you advise them?
Absolutely take a look at the data migration service.
Yeah,
That
I think,
is,
and
yeah. Go ahead, Varun.
no, Jared, you can cover this question, but I was hoping, that we do have one slide to talk about single to flex migration.
So
Yeah, and
yeah.
my favorite type of question is something I have a slide for. So if you want to, we can tackle that when we get to the slide. Absolutely.
I don't know if we have a slide specifically on single server, but single server is the service that that the Microsoft Azure team did develop to host Postgres initially. So you can be assured that the data migration service is going to encompass all of the requirements to migrate single server holistically to flexible server without any kind of challenges. I do have my desktops are highlighting the screen, so I can't see the questions just yet. But if anyone wants to but perhaps share them with me, or we can save them for later as soon as I get through one or two more slides.
You
Sure.
got it.
I do want to just highlight for heterogeneous databases the relationship that Postgres and Oracle share. And while Postgres on Azure is somewhat more recent, given Postgres's extended lifetime, Postgres has been under development for, I think, over 30 years. So you're talking about a platform with a tremendous amount of maturity. And Postgres, for its lifetime, has been considered as a candidate for organizations looking to migrate their Oracle workloads to a more open source or a different platform. And when you look at the ways that the Oracle engine and the database is designed, you will find similarities between approaches that the Postgres team have taken in developing the Postgres platform. And the reason I highlight that is there is no reason to be afraid. If you are an Oracle DBA and you're an expert in Oracle and you perhaps have some fear or trepidation about adopting a new platform, there are similarities that you will find that will make you feel more confident and comfortable in using Postgres. And as you go further along in that adoption cycle, you will learn even more exciting and incredible capabilities about Postgres that will make you even more relevant and excited to be a DBA, or as the DBA role changes to be a data engineer or a more of a infrastructure engineer. There are more and more capabilities that Postgres offers, and so we want to embrace Oracle DBAs and let you know there's plenty of room and space to learn in Postgres. Let's jump in for a moment and start to walk through what a migration scenario may entail when you're using the data migration service on Azure. And as I mentioned earlier, that begins with a pre-migration, and that is a comprehensive pre-migration. We're going to be looking at ensuring that the authentication and the security of the migration is appropriate. We're going to be looking at compatibility between the version that you're using today. And I believe the slides are really focusing in this demo around homogeneous migrations. So Postgres to Postgres, I think this would be a very relevant use case for single server migrations. Pardon me, let me get that out of the way. We're going to be ensuring that the right SKUs and the allocation of resources are appropriate. All of these things are handled automatically to ensure that you have confidence as you're migrating your platforms. And then as we're looking at the data migration, we're also doing validation to ensure that the replication settings are configured appropriately. We want to do as much upfront work as possible to ensure the success of your migration and guarantee that that migration completes successfully. So let's talk about where you encounter, where you can find the data migration service. I think the most prominent place to identify is when you deploy a new Postgres Flex server. In the portal blade, you'll see a section dedicated for migration. I do want to highlight that there are a number of modalities that you can use for your migrations. Certainly, we encourage you to look at the portal, but you can also use the CLI, and you can also you could also use our APIs as well. And there are some examples of what the CLI looks like. And we'll also get into some of the slight nuance and differences between using the portal and the CLI. Let me move ahead to our next slide. I'll just take a brief moment here to explain what you see as you continue in that migration. You're going to be configuring a runtime server. A runtime server serves a number of roles, but most importantly, a runtime server provides you with the ability to securely manage a private network. If you are using on-premise resources in your own network, if you have a private VNet on Azure, the runtime server is a resource that we can inject into your network and then provide network connectivities so that we can connect you to our Flex destination securely without violating any of the network protections that you have in place. There is no state or no data that's ever stored inside the runtime server. It's merely a proxy or a pipeline vessel that is used to move your data, but it's one that allows you to do that securely. And this is something that doesn't incur any charges or resources on your behalf. That's something that we provide as part of the migration service for you.
Free is my favorite price.
Yeah.
I think that goes across the board for just about everybody.
Free, reliable, right? Both free and
There we
reliable.
go. If you got to pick two, those are the two to pick.
Absolutely. So what you'll see when you're continuing through that process is you will choose a source. You will then choose the details that are appropriate for your destination. We'll get to the destination, but one of the details I want to highlight here really briefly is the differences in some of the nuance between the portal and the CLI when you're choosing the databases of your source Postgres instance or your homogeneous target. In the portal, we do have a limit on the number of databases that you can choose, and that's set to 8. But if you do decide to automate or create infrastructure as a process, using the CLI, we do not have any limitations on the number of databases that you can choose. So it is a minor detail that I want to highlight. I certainly encourage everyone to take a look at both modalities. But if you do have a use case where you need more than 8 databases in a single migration, you can continue to use that capability through the CLI.
Well, and that's really powerful. And I would say a lot of customers, especially enterprise customers, they're going to end up doing everything through a script. And the more infrastructure as code deployments that they could do, the more likely they are to need to do it. So it's great that that's where the power lies. But it also is very helpful because if you're a customer and you have more than 8 databases and you need to migrate them utilizing the service, it also lets you know, hey, this is a decision tree path. More than 8, let's go the route of using the CLI, the APIs.
Absolutely. We want to give you that choice. We want to give you the ability to execute your workload in the way that is most appropriate for your needs. And then finally, we want to talk about observability. How do I know that I am seeing the success that I require? And we provide that through the migration execution summary. We're able to highlight a number of details about all of the different stages of the migration and allow you to explore that more deeply to see exactly what is occurring or what has transpired through the course of your migration. So let's just bring everything home. Let's summarize the benefits of the data migration service for Azure Postgres are our fast, free, reliable migrations, the simplicity of the migration wizard to walk you through that process and ensure that you have that full coverage of what's required, the flexibility of deploying migrations through the CLI or the ARM APIs, and the comprehensiveness of the migration. That's another aspect that I cannot underline or overstate enough, is that migrations are complex. There are a number of moving parts, but the data migration service provides coverage for all of those dependencies, all of those requirements. You have flexibility in choice in choosing whether or not your data is offline versus online. Our final slide will just cover some of the considerations and the benefits of some of those options, and validation and observability. So lastly, just one final slide, just to cover a few other details when it comes to making a decision on offline versus online. Offline is by far more simple. We are taking a snapshot of your data and we're moving it. We don't have to concern ourselves with any changes in flight. And in that sense, there is a reduced surface area for any kind of a failure. But you do need to be have a consideration, be aware that the right way to do offline migrations is to include some amount of downtime. This is obviously ideal for your workloads when you can afford that window of downtime. But if that isn't something that you can allow for your workloads, online is the way to go. And we have full confidence in our online capabilities. However, it is a more complex operation, and we just need to be mindful that it's going to take a little bit more care and visibility in monitoring to make sure that completes successfully. There could be catastrophic changes or impacts to your system if there is a network outage or conflict that are outside the boundaries of the migration. You do need to be mindful that an online migration could be impacted by something like that. But that is obviously suited for workloads where your nature of your business is critical and you need to maintain that constant uptime. But the variety of choice, the versatility is really the point that we wanted to stress, and making sure that you're thinking about those considerations to make the right choices for the success of your migration is the really the most important point. So I can stop there. I think with my slides, I'll turn it back over to the team. Something we're certainly excited about. We're continuing to invest resources into migrations in addition to all of the other aspects of Postgres, and we're so excited to continue to make Postgres the best platform on Azure.
Well, and I love the flexibility that you put into the migration service. And you're actually absolutely right. There's a couple key things in that slide that go for any migration whatsoever, which is they are complex, especially if you're moving a big data system, if you're moving a system where you can have a very low downtime because you've got back end users and you've got to have a communicated outage window. Not to mention when people want to do this, test, retest. This is functionality where you could take, before you do this migration, go to your QA or your staging environment, do a backup from prod, and then run that Flex server migration. So that way you understand the timing involved, especially with the online and the cutover and the capabilities. What is it, those final steps, and make sure and document it. Often when I work with customers, what we'll do is we will get everything kicked up. We will get it running. We will put it in place for production probably the weekend before the migration. We will run it through the week to make sure everything looks good. Then Friday night, people aren't going home, or if they're home, they're up late. And it's that Friday to Saturday window where you're bringing it online. Saturday, you're monitoring it, making sure everything's good. And if you're lucky, on Sunday, you thought you were going to work, but you're actually going to be able to spend the day relaxing with family and maybe watching football or going out for a lovely day where it's not crowded because everybody else is home watching football.
Great advice. Absolutely.
Yes. So we had a couple of really great
I can
questions.
help, Brad.
Yeah.
Let's take the question, and Brad, I can pull my slides up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe, Varun, the question was we have many customers still using Azure Postgres single server that is due for retirement next year. What would you advise them? And I think that was the slide you were looking for, correct, sir?
Yeah, so I brought this up. So this is a key point. This is a key inflection point in our service, that we have an older service, the Azure Postgres single server, and then we have now a flagship flexible server. And then we are helping customers migrate because single server is due for retirement in March 2025. Jared, keep me honest with the dates over here. So team, especially Jared's team, is really hard at work in a lot of tooling and a lot of consulting in helping customers migrate from the older service to the newer service. We definitely don't want customers to be doing these migrations close to the retirement dates. So I think it's a great idea, possibly for us to come back again and then again have a very focused conversation from single to flex migration. But be aware, take this as a little heads up if you weren't already, that those retirement dates are approaching fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, Varun. That's a really important point. The critical termination dates are hardline dates. They are important in the way that we support the Azure platform, and we want to do everything that we can to help our customers be as proactive as possible. Don't wait. The best time to get started with your single server migration is yesterday. The next best time is now. But that said, we have the infrastructure and the migration services built into the platform to make that as seamless and easy to use as possible. So take full advantage of those capabilities as soon as you can, not only to ensure that you have the peace of mind and you don't have to worry about any looming deadlines, but you can start to consider all of the new benefits and capabilities that are now going to be provided to you on flexible server, and to even think about supporting new versions of the Postgres platform itself.
Sure.
Absolutely. When we talk about that date too, that retirement date is March 28th, 2025. And people may sit there and think, oh, I've got a lot of time before that comes. But if you're a retail customer, you know that typically you're going to have um, some periods of time where you have your production stop periods, especially during the holidays. Coming up, Halloween, right? Everybody's going to be going and getting Halloween candy. And depending on what type of retail store you are, you might have a blackout period that starts around Halloween. Regardless of whatever type of blackout period you have, you are definitely, if you are a retail customer, going to be hitting those in November around Black Friday and also Christmas. I remember I was a DBA for Publix for many years. And when we were working for Publix, we had those periods in time, November, December, that was go ahead and do stuff in dev, go ahead and do stuff in QA, but there are only emergency break fixes going out into production. So if you look at that, we're right now in the beginning of October. So very, very soon, we're going to hit those production freezes for certain customers. Then when you get to January, that's your time to shine. So when I'm working with customers during these phases, what I'm saying is, hey, if we're looking at a migration, this is when we do those backup and restores. This is when we put this on our QA environment and we begin to practice this and we get the timing for the migration down. Because your window is going to be January to February. You do not want to be doing this in early March. You're really starting to skirt that deadline. So you want to make sure that you get this done. And again, depending on the type of company you are, even if you don't have a production blackout period during November and December, that's also the period in time where most people go on vacation and you have staff that is unavailable. You're going to have contractor staff that's unavailable. So we are rapidly hitting where those timelines are going to be. January is going to be that window that most people are looking at as that last ditch moment, January, February. And you don't want to be the person rushing to get gas at the gas station when the hurricane is coming to town. There's going to be a really long line.
Yep.
That's not the time to be running on empty. You want to make sure that you're planning ahead for these types of things. So when we look at that date, even though it can feel like it's a while out, you're going to blink your eyes and we are going to be through these next couple months and we're going to be at that dwindling timeline. Part of the key also is the advancements and the upgrades. We aren't retiring single server because it's so much better than flexible server. As a matter of fact, people are going to get a better experience migrating to flexible server. They're going to have better performance. And that's one of the things that's proven. That's part of the reason we're moving forward with that. So talk about something that where when you do a migration, you should see some performance improvements going from one platform to another. And the additional functionality that we've been talking about, you're seeing more and more of that entwined specifically with flexible server. So it's more important than ever that people get off that single server instance, get into flexible server. Varun, if you want to come back and talk to us about that, absolutely. Jared, of course, you're amazing and wonderful as well. So you're welcome back anytime.
No,
But we're here almost closing up. Varun, please go ahead. Give us you and Jared, and then give us your final thoughts.
yeah, like here's the final little AKA MS linked list. It's like this is one, which I always say. If you're on a conference, if there's one slide that I want you to picture or take a screenshot or So this is that slide. It has our blog link, documentation link, or our social handles. So that's the slide which we have. And there's one more thing, which is pretty interesting, is that we do a lot of work for community, and one way of contributing to community is not just by the code, but we actually do our conference. Like Microsoft runs an entire Postgres conference. We talked about this a little bit, and the next one is going to be there in June 2025. So just save the date slides. We'll keep coming back and we'll keep talking about it. How if you want to join the conference, it's free, and how if you want to even come back and join as a speaker and you want to submit a paper, we can talk about those things. But yeah, this is just the save the date. I think that's my last slide, Jared. You have more to add? Yeah.
Just that Microsoft loves Postgres, and that we are embracing the community. We want you to be successful on Postgres. If you need to migrate, reach out, connect with your account team, connect with the PM team, connect with the partners that you're working with. Especially if you're on single server, it is time bound, and we want to encourage you, don't hold back, take advantage of all of the capabilities, and you'll be as successful as ever.
Perfect.
I appreciate it. Varun, Jared, thank you so much as always for joining us. Neeraj, it's been a pleasure. Everyone out there, please go look at the description of the video. We have taken the links from this that we talked about, the charities to help for Western North Carolina, Postgres, SQL 17 on Azure Flexible Server. We have that link up for that blog. Data Nerd, .blog, which is Varun's blog, and then also Azure Database for Postgres. We have that AKAMS link that will take you to all the announcements for the Azure Postgres blog. Thank you so much for joining us today on Tales from the Field. For everyone here, we appreciate you so much, and be good to one another and stay safe out there. Goodbye, everybody.
Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna be a good day. Wake up. Today's gonna